As Secretary of State, Jefferson served as President Washington's chief foreign policy advisor, a role well suited to his diplomatic experience in France. He accepted the position and relocated from Virginia to New York, the federal government's seat at the time, officially beginning his duties in March 1790. Although Jefferson's primary responsibility was foreign affairs, his position in Washington's cabinet also immersed him in debates about the future political direction of the United States. The administration was largely dominated by the Federalists, a faction that advocated for a strong central government as essential to national prosperity and security. Among its leading figures were Vice President John Adams and Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton, who had been one of Washington's closest confidants since the Revolutionary War. Hamilton, at just 34 years old, had already left a significant mark on American politics, authoring the majority of the Federalist Papers and championing the Constitution's adoption in 1789. Jefferson, by contrast, identified as a Democratic Republican, firmly opposing Federalist policies. He believed in defending states' rights and individual liberties against potential overreach by the federal government. Jefferson saw Hamilton's vision as favoring northern commercial elites over the agrarian interests of the southern states, fostering conditions for tyranny akin to what the Revolution had sought to overthrow. A sharp ideological rivalry developed between Jefferson and Hamilton, with tensions flaring over Hamilton's financial proposals. Hamilton sought to establish a national bank to manage the debt, consolidate state debts under federal control, and empower Congress to levy taxes to repay them. These measures were strongly supported by debt-laden northern states like New York and Massachusetts, but vehemently opposed by southern states like Virginia and North Carolina, which had managed their finances more prudently. The stalemate in Congress was broken through a compromise brokered by Jefferson and Hamilton. The southern states agreed to Hamilton's proposals in exchange for relocating the federal capital to a more southern location along the Potomac River, in what would become Washington, D.C. The domestic policy debate spilled over into foreign policy. While Federalists like Adams and Hamilton sought to rebuild ties with Great Britain, Jefferson favored closer relations with revolutionary France, whose ideals mirrored those of the American Revolution. However, the increasingly radical turn of the French Revolution, particularly the Jacobin-led Reign of Terror in 1793, tested Jefferson's pro-French stance. The executions of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, along with the exile of moderates like Lafayette, lent credibility to Federalist warnings of revolutionary anarchy. Despite these developments, Jefferson remained loyal to the ideals of the French Revolution. When France declared war on Britain in February 1793, Jefferson privately opposed Washington's proclamation of neutrality. However, his position was weakened by the conduct of French envoy Edmond Charles Genet, who openly criticized Washington and attempted to draw the United States into hostilities with Britain. By late 1793, the political animosity between Jefferson and Hamilton reached a breaking point. Both men offered their resignations, but while Washington persuaded Hamilton to stay, he reluctantly accepted Jefferson's resignation on January 1, 1794. Retreating to Monticello, Jefferson spent the next 2 years in semi-retirement, remodeling his home and enjoying a respite from national politics. Nevertheless, he kept a watchful eye on developments through correspondence with Republican allies. The ratification of the Jay Treaty in 1795 was a particularly bitter blow. While the treaty improved trade relations with Britain and was celebrated by Federalists, it infuriated Republicans and provoked outrage in France, straining Franco-American relations. After intense political battles, the Senate narrowly approved the treaty in August 1795, and it took effect in early 1796. However, it wasn't until April of that year that Congress, following a narrow vote, allocated the necessary funds to fulfill its terms. Following this political setback and with Washington's second term nearing its end, the Republicans began searching for a challenger to the presidency. The choice was clear: Thomas Jefferson. On September 19, 1796, President Washington published his farewell address, announcing his decision to retire from public life and not seek a third term. In this address, he urged national unity and warned against the spirit of party, which he saw as a source of political instability and a potential pathway to despotism under the guise of restoring order. Washington had witnessed firsthand how the rivalry between Jefferson and Hamilton had strained his administration. Despite his warnings, Washington's retirement ushered in the first truly contested presidential election in American history. The Federalists backed John Adams for the presidency, while the Democratic Republicans rallied behind Jefferson. Under the Constitution at the time, each elector in the Electoral College cast 2 votes. The candidate with the majority became president, and the runner-up became vice president. Electors were chosen by state legislatures in most states, and political networks, rather than public campaigning, played the decisive role. After the votes were counted, Adams narrowly defeated Jefferson, securing 71 electoral votes to Jefferson's 68. On March 4, 1797, John Adams became the second president of the United States, with Jefferson as his vice president. Though once close allies, the growing ideological divide between the Federalists and Republicans had strained their relationship. Adams's presidency unfolded in a tense international atmosphere, with fears of war involving Britain or France casting a shadow over American politics. In 1798, Adams revealed that an American delegation to France had been met with demands for bribes by French officials, an incident known as the XYZ affair. Public outrage ensued, and relations with France deteriorated, leading to the undeclared Quasi-War, during which French naval forces attacked American shipping. In response, Adams signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which empowered the president to deport foreigners deemed a security risk and made it illegal to publish defamatory statements about the government. Jefferson, viewing these measures as a dangerous step toward authoritarianism, quietly orchestrated Republican opposition to the laws through press criticism and advice to state governments. Jefferson's vice presidency was fraught with challenges. While publicly supporting the administration, he privately acted as a leader of the opposition. The tension culminated in the 1800 election, as Adams and Jefferson prepared for a rematch. By this time, the federal government had moved from Philadelphia to its permanent home in Washington, D.C., a city named for the late President Washington, who had died on December 14, 1799. The 1800 election was one of the most contentious in American history. Jefferson's running mate, Aaron Burr, played a crucial role in securing Republican dominance in New York, which helped swing the election. However, when the Electoral College votes were tallied, Jefferson and Burr were tied with 73 votes each, throwing the decision to the House of Representatives. The House, dominated by Federalists, deliberated for 6 days starting on February 11, 1801. Federalists sought to exploit the situation, some supporting Burr to deny Jefferson the presidency. Behind the scenes, negotiations took place. Jefferson refused to agree to conditions that would restrict his policy decisions but eventually gained the support needed to prevail. On February 17, 1801, after 36 ballots, Jefferson was elected president. Ironically, Jefferson's victory owed much to Alexander Hamilton, who disliked both Jefferson and Burr but regarded Jefferson as the lesser of two evils. Hamilton's influence persuaded several Federalists to switch their votes to Jefferson. This rivalry with Burr would later culminate in their infamous duel in 1804, which resulted in Hamilton's death. On March 4, 1801, Thomas Jefferson was sworn in as the third President of the United States. In his inaugural address, he called for unity, famously stating, "Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have been called by different names brethren of the same principle. We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." This appeal to moderation reassured those who feared Jefferson would dismantle Federalist institutions, though he did appoint key Republican allies to his cabinet. As Secretary of State, the new president selected James Madison, his Virginia protege who had been a trusted source of political counsel for nearly 3 decades. Albert Gallatin, a Pennsylvanian Republican and a prominent leader in opposing the Alien and Sedition Acts in the House of Representatives, was appointed Secretary of the Treasury. During his 8-year presidency, Jefferson reduced federal obligations, cutting the national debt from $83 million to $57 million and scaling back military expenditures to pre-war levels. He dismissed the value of engaging in an arms race with European powers, favoring neutrality in their conflicts. Jefferson's presidency is most notably linked to America's westward expansion. Although he never traveled west of Virginia, his father's experiences on the western frontier had intrigued him since childhood. Early leaders of the American Republic feared European powers in North America, particularly Britain and Spain, as well as indigenous tribes, might obstruct the nation's expansion beyond the Mississippi River. These concerns intensified following the Third Treaty of San Ildefonso in October 1800, a secret Franco-Spanish agreement transferring the Louisiana Territory to France in exchange for Italian lands. Napoleon Bonaparte, then First Consul of France, appeared intent on establishing a new empire in North America, a prospect that alarmed Jefferson, as French control of New Orleans threatened the economic lifeline of the southern states. Despite his Francophile inclinations, Jefferson was willing to ally with Britain to safeguard American interests. However, he first sought to purchase New Orleans from Napoleon. Jefferson tasked James Monroe with negotiating alongside Robert Livingston, the American ambassador in Paris. Monroe, a former Virginia governor and longtime friend of Jefferson and Madison, handled the sensitive mission. By early 1803, shifting developments made the sale of New Orleans more appealing to Napoleon. The fragile peace between France and Britain was unraveling, and Napoleon's ambitions in the Americas had suffered a major blow following the disastrous loss of his forces to yellow fever in Saint-Domingue, modern Haiti. Faced with these challenges and aware of Louisiana's vulnerability to British attack, Napoleon offered to sell the entire Louisiana Territory to the United States for $15 million. Monroe and Livingston finalized the agreement in April 1803, and Congress ratified it in October, more than doubling the nation's size overnight. Although Jefferson was celebrated for the Louisiana Purchase, critics accused him of overstepping constitutional limits since Congress had allocated only $10 million for the deal. Despite his reservations about expanding executive power, Jefferson defended the acquisition. Even before the purchase, Jefferson had secured congressional approval for an expedition to explore the Western Territories. He appointed Captain Meriwether Lewis, a Virginian and Revolutionary War veteran, to lead the mission. Lewis invited Lieutenant William Clark to co-lead, and together they formed the Corps of Discovery. Departing from St. Louis in 1804, the expedition reached the Pacific in 1805, returning by 1806. Jefferson avidly followed their progress, dedicating a room in the presidential mansion to display their natural artifacts and accounts. Jefferson's vision of westward expansion embodied his ideal of an agrarian republic. His first-term achievements, including tax reductions and the Louisiana Purchase, earned him widespread popularity. Despite Federalist opposition in the press, Jefferson won re-election in 1804 by a landslide, securing 162 electoral votes to 14. His second term, however, brought challenges. Vice President Aaron Burr's political career ended after killing Alexander Hamilton in a duel, and rumors of Burr's treasonous plans led to his arrest and trial in 1807. In foreign policy, Jefferson faced increasing tensions with Britain. Following the Chesapeake Leopard affair in 1807, he implemented the Embargo Act, halting trade with all foreign nations. While the act prevented war and encouraged domestic industry, it was widely unpopular due to rising costs of goods. Jefferson retired to Monticello in 1809, spending his later years with family and maintaining correspondence with John Adams, with whom he rekindled a friendship. Both men died on July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of American independence. While Jefferson is celebrated as a visionary statesman, his legacy is marred by contradictions regarding slavery. DNA evidence supports claims that he fathered children with Sally Hemings, But Jefferson kept most of his slaves in bondage, unlike George Washington, who freed his upon his death. Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming all men as equals, remain a stark contrast to the realities of slavery during and long after his time. Thomas Jefferson's legacy of liberty, education, and innovation continues to shape the fabric of our nation, inspiring generations to strive for a more perfect union. However, his complex relationship with slavery raises important questions about the contradictions between his ideals and his actions. What are your thoughts on Thomas Jefferson's legacy? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know what topics you'd like to see next.